Passion in my pocket, so my penny should be. What they selling is cheap, so I'm buying that this freedom is free. I've been becoming me. See when Jesus taking the lead, with purpose I bleed and rise like going under the heat. Defeat is a never. You can't reattach what is severed. What's bringing you pleasure can tell you where you stacking your treasure. When storm is your weather, know that it gets worse for it's better.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Esau McCauley podcast. I'm your host, Esau McCauley. I'm joined by the not co-host, but producer of the show, Mike.
I mean, not co-host, but maybe
Co-host-ish.
Co-host in training.
We're thinking about it. We're considering it. You know, let the people
probably not.
Let the people say if we get 15 comments on let me up that.
No, 15. You said it.
Maybe 25 comments to say let Mike cook. That exact phrase. Then maybe you get to be the co-host.
Esau has such a low opinion of me that he's like, Mike doesn't have 15 friends that will do him a favor.
You're right.
I can set this at 15 and there's no way we're hitting it.
You're right. But we also have Katie Blackburn, right? Sorry, my brain. Mike has gotten me disheveled. But Katie Blackburn, you are an author, a writer, a blogger. No, it's not blogging anymore. You have a Substack, correct?
Yeah.
I have a Substack, but I'm not offended by the term blogger either. It's fine.
Substack. I know, but times are changing.
Yes.
And you are a mother of 5. Now we're going to talk six. Sorry, mother of 6. I got to get it right. So it's in my brain. Normally people are not 2 kids past me. I'm at 4. And so usually there's either 3 or 5. And so, I'm usually like the big family. So you actually have passed me here. Now, since we're going to talk a little bit about parenting later, we thought we had this game that we play sometimes in the podcast called Are You Washed? And the whole point is washed is a quasi-young person term for too old to know about or do the subject under conversation. And so since we're going to talk about parenting, I thought we might start with a question about family movies. And I asked you to have together your Mount Rushmore of family movies. Now, I've given the exact same instructions to Mike, who only had 2 movies. And anyone who's seen Mount Rushmore, how many presidents are on Mount Rushmore? Katie, do you know the answer to this question?
There are 4.
There are 4.
Okay. So I guess he wanted to myself, or
I guess he wanted to have 2, and then there's blank spaces. I guess it's only been 2 families. Defend yourself.
Esau, you gave this instruction 10 minutes ago.
10 minutes ago.
In a laundry list of a bunch of other stuff I have to do to get things ready. So I've got a lot on my mind.
Okay, that's fair.
I have 4 now.
We will allow Katie to go first to give us her Mount Rushmore of family movies. These either be movies that you like or that your kids like. What are your 4?
Okay. I'm going to start with what I think is one of the greatest family movies of all time, and it's Sister Act 2.
Oh, look at this. Look, you know what? You said somebody with black characters in it, you win the gold star. You're coming back on the podcast. I thought I was going to have to be able to personally ask the black people, look at you, there's not a black person on your list.
Excuse me? This one right here.
I can't see that. What does that say?
It's Space Jam.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, Michael
Space
Jordan.
Jam.
Yeah. That's low. Okay, I'm sorry. We had Sister Act 2. That's 1.
Sister Act 2, yes. Okay, my second one is probably Home Alone.
Ooh, Home Alone.
A classic.
A classic.
A classic.
Are we going to go with just Home Alone or the entire franchise?
Honestly, well, I'm a fan of 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
They've come out with some new ones recently.
No. This is the first round. Okay, Home Alone franchise. That's that's solid.
Okay, number 3. This one's a little bit sad, but it's still one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And this is I might actually be washed after this one. It's Homeward Bound.
Oh, goodness.
Homeward Bound.
Classic.
That's a classic.
So sad.
It's classic.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a slight old
Mm-hmm.
person classic, but that's okay. We love you. It's right in my lane, so we must be around the same age.
Probably.
Yes.
And I've seen a bunch of memes on social media going around about millennials and where our trauma came from. And then it's a video of Shadow coming home to Peter. And then the last one I have here is Remember the Titans, because tell me that is not one of the greatest ever. So that was what I came up with.
That was great. That's a solid list. I think that your list is better than mine. Okay.
I mean, that's a low bar. Esau.
So I would tell you the one that I didn't make because I was worried about traumatizing the people. But since you had I had My Girl.
Oh.
But I feel like I don't know.
But yeah, same category as Homeward Bound. It is.
I don't know if I want I'm not watching it with my kids. That one will rip your heart out.
I mean,
it
so
rip
sad.
your heart out.
Oh my goodness! I'm crying like a single thug tear with My Girl. So this is my list, and I'm actually creating the list. I have 15 movies on my list, so I thought that I would let people. I would do mine. So, Princess Bride, Don't Judge Me. Anything with Paddington in it, Akeelah and the Bee, and The Preacher's Wife. And I'm adding a fifth president / Mount Rushmore.
Room on the Mountain.
Dr. Dolittle and Karate Kid.
Okay, you now have 6, Esau.
You're right. But though I feel like that's a solid list. I had to get some I had to get all of my people. So maybe.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what is your list?
I've got Toy Story.
Ooh, okay.
I mean, the first 3 movies. After that, no, forget it.
How many are there?
I think there's 5, or there's about
I
to be 5.
think there's another one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's 4. I think they're working on a 5th one.
I think they're like the great grandkid now.
I know. It's too much. But the first 3, so good. Lion King.
Okay.
Solid. Space Jam.
Space Jam.
I mean, come on.
Which nobody thinks is a good movie. It's just it's an important
I saw
marker.
that movie when I was 6, 7, and it had my 2 favorite things in it, Michael Jordan and Bugs Bunny.
There we go.
It's just it's so good. And then Dark Horse, but Jumanji, the original one.
Oh, with
Robin
Williams.
Mm-hmm.
It's shocking that none of us put Star Wars on there. Is it not family enough?
Yeah, and it's just so old. None of us are that old,
It's really weird because I don't know if you pay attention to this, Katie. And maybe this is your generation. We don't ask people's age before they come on the podcast. But if you listen to like people who are adults now talk about Star Wars and they talk about like the second series that I've kind of memory wiped. Mm-hmm. There's this one guy who was drafted in the NFL whose favorite one is the one with Anakin.
Oh, wow.
And he wears his like what do you call it? Like makeup, not makeup, like
the eye black,
the eye black, but he does it in the shape of Anakin.
Oh, that's.
And he said it's because of Star Wars. Like that's not even Star Wars. Anyways,
concerning.
Sorry, I'm sure that you do more than movies with your kids, and there is no kind of easy way to transition from a lighthearted discussion of Star Wars and the movies we watch with our kids to like the complicated nature of parenting and even being a single mom. I was raised by a single mom, and she did a great job raising the 4 of us, often by herself. But she did most of that off stage. No one saw it. People know about it because I've written about it in my book, but most people don't know it. You were a writer before and during your divorce and now after. And so if it's okay, I want to read something that you wrote, and then we could talk a little bit about it and why you decide to do these things publicly. Yeah. And it was just so moving that I thought I needed to read this out loud.
Okay.
You said, as of today, I'm no longer married. And I want to tell you that one can see this reality coming for months and it's still wild, unexplainable even for me, and it is true. It is true, and somehow I'm okay. But this is the part that I was moved by. I'm not okay because I'm amazing, laughable. And I'm not okay because God wired me with more resilience than anyone else. He didn't. And I'm not okay because I'm happy in any way about this. I'm not. And I'm not okay because I'm preaching any sort of toxic positivity message to myself. Again, I'm not. I'm not okay because of any self-care routine or good habit that I put into place. I'll do better with those next year. Maybe I can ask if you got better with self-care routines. I'm okay because Jesus rescued me as a little girl who somehow miraculously understood the sin in my own heart and asked him to fix it. And it's been limping along so imperfectly since then. Trying to figure out who this Jesus is and what it means to claim you need and love and follow him in the world as busted up as this one, and a life so far from what I planned as mine. I can still not find the right words to tell you who Jesus is and what it really means to claim that I need and love and follow him. But I can tell you that I do. That his grace is real, and the only word I can come up with for being ripped wide open in pain, but still being okay, is just that, grace. Mm. So all of us have difficult parts in our lives.
Right.
I wrote a story that talks about like being abused as a child. Mm-hmm. So how is it as a writer, do you balance what you keep to yourself and what you share with the world? Like, why have you decided to be as open as you are about the difficult parts of life?
Mm-hmm. No, that's a really great question. And I think as a writer, it's something that I don't know that I'm getting it perfect every time, to be honest. And I'll start with that. But what I think made it natural for me is that I've always been a storyteller. And that is so much of how God wired me to think and to process. And I say this lightheartedly often, but it's really true. Writing is a lot cheaper than therapy. And don't get me wrong, I am a big fan of therapy. Yeah. But I can write every day.
Yeah.
And I do not have the ability to go see a counselor or a therapist every day. And sometimes it's, I think it's Anna Quindlen has a quote that says, I don't know what I think until I see what I say.
Yeah.
And that's really how my heart and my mind, how I kind of forge that connection. I write it down and I tell stories. And so in terms of feeling, I guess the green light and the peace to share them publicly. Well, one, I always have, even when, and I know we'll get a little bit more into my family and my parenting, but I have an 11-year-old son with severe autism.
Yeah.
And I started writing about that kind of right away, even before he was diagnosed. And I felt like what I was doing when I was writing was making other people, I was just saying, hey, it's me too.
Yeah.
It's me too. And so Lori Ferguson has a great line, and I want to give her credit for it because I'm stealing it from her. Yeah. But she talks about how authors do need to be mindful of platforming their pain.
Yes. And that's the question I try to, I was trying to get at, because one of the things that I say about my own writing is there are some stories in my life that I've not spoken about publicly, because I believe that those stories still kind of have control over me. And there's certain stories that I've been able to wrestle some kind of meaning out of that I can then bend those stories to God's glory. And I feel like I'm ready to tell a story when I can kind of, to control it sounds like maybe the wrong word, but I can understand, I've been able to weave that story into the narrative of what God is up to in my life.
Yes.
And some of those stories that are kind of off to the side, that it's just like, I survived this and there's nothing else that I have to say about it right now. And then if I would write about those things, it would feel like, well, I'm just telling you about my pain. And I'm glad that people can see that they're not alone, but I don't want people to come see me bleed. I want them to come see me, in some sense, in the process of healing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's sort of what I've always tried to do as a writer. And I think that's what people have told me what resonates is it's really not just this like emotional dump onto a page. It's that somehow I'm being held in all of this with Jesus. And that is what I hope the arc of, I don't like just tying a God bow on everything, right? That's obnoxious. People don't need that when they're really hurting. But somehow, like even in that post that you read, I meant every word of it. Like, I'm not okay. I cry all the time. I'm still feeling this, but somehow I believe that the tomb is still empty.
Yeah.
That our resurrection hope, like the only hope that we have, whether things are good or bad, or just a regular day, like our hope is truly unshakable. And sometimes you have to really get to those dark places to believe that. And that's the only quote unquote God bow I want on my writing. And I'm not afraid to say this really sucks.
Yeah.
This really sucks.
And that's something, the God bow, the thing that you talked about was really compelling, because I used to think that I could I think with my children, I used to have this idea of there was an age or a moment where I could say that they're good. And I could kind of say, well, I've done my job as a parent. They made it through high school. They made it through college, and they're kind of secure in their faith. And I realized, well, I didn't really know what I truly believed until the world like knocked me over. and really like you're down at the bottom and the only thing that you're clinging to is the resurrection. Yes. And I remember at this moment in my life, this is something that like the event that I'm describing here is not written in any books. This is like Esau emoting without you knowing the context. And I remember at that moment thinking, oh my goodness, I genuinely believe that Jesus Christ is risen from the dead. And that is the only reason I'm able to survive. And the part that was unsettling to me then, let's say, until my kids actually are pushed to that point, that's when they're going to discover who they are. Yeah. And all I can do now is to pray that when they get to that point, that I got to, and it doesn't matter how much money you have, how much resources it has, it's not always related to like marriage, or it could just be an illness. It could just be despair, whatever it is. There's this moment where the only thing that's going to carry you through is gospel hope. Yeah. And I just say, now my prayer is, God, when that moment comes in the life of my children, be there. So Amen. What do you think churches can do, especially for moms, or people who are transitioning to becoming single mothers? What do you think the churches can do better to support people in the midst of this complicated world? Like what do we do poorly as a church? What could we potentially do better?
Yeah. This is a loaded question because I definitely don't want to be somebody that's just like constantly finding like the negative sides of, because I do know when you walk into a church broken, you're walking into a room full of people that are also broken. Yeah. Right. And it's not, I don't like what we call it like the suffering Olympics when we compare like, well, who's got it worse and who needs to care more? It's just like, oh man, we all just need to have a lot of grace and a lot of ability to just pivot with one another. And, but I will say it is remarkably hard to get to church as a single mom. Not only in my case, obviously I have a half dozen children, which is just like so many kids.
Which this might be a strange question. Which car do you drive?
Oh,
do you drive that big van like that?
I drive the big van. I drive the Ford Transit, and it's really like sometimes I'll see other people driving it out in the wild, and I'm like, is that what I look like? That's bad.
Well, the reason I know is because I have a friend of mine who's Catholic. I think they have like 5 or 6 kids, and they joke that it's basically once you get past 4 or 5, it's only the transit. It's like it
really is.
I didn't know if you had found like another car besides the transit, but large family hive there will know that there's like the transit is the move that you're in. Now, did you gussy up the transit? Did you get a blue one or just white?
It's black.
It's black. Okay, black or white?
It's black. The fanciest thing is because I live in the Northwest and we have Pacific Northwest. Sorry, and we have like real winters here. Yeah. I needed seat warmers. That was our splurge.
Okay, seat warmers. Hi, it's Esau. If you're looking for another fascinating podcast that touches on religion and spirituality, I have the perfect recommendation for you. The Signal award-winning show, No Small Endeavor. As a friend and recent guest of the podcast, I can truly say it's worth a listen. Produced by Great Feeling Studios and PRX, No Small Endeavor explores what it means to live a good life. Each episode, host Lee C. Kemp sits down with special guests like pastor and theologian Tish Harrison Warren, civil rights hero Reverend James Lawson, and one of the world's most influential living theologians, Stanley Hauerwas, to discuss how their faith shaped their journey. If you're looking for a place to start, check out their recent episode with Americana songwriter Drew Holcomb, in which he unpacks how creativity as a way to overcome fear makes something that didn't exist before. It's a beautiful heart-to-heart. Don't miss out. Follow No Small Endeavor on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast.
Zones Field got him doing football numbers, only average grown. He was acting grown.
Yeah. Getting the children to school, to church is hard.
Getting to church is remarkably hard. That's true. That's true for any family. And if there's 2 parents helping get the kids ready and out the door, we always joke like easy like Sunday morning. Who wrote those lyrics? That's like not for the family trying to get to church on time.
What is he doing lying to people in the Commodores?
Come on, Lionel.
He clearly did not have 6 kids.
He didn't have
kids. But it's more than just the real like pragmatic, practical. Does everyone have shoes? Does everyone have socks? Yeah. it is knowing I'm going to walk in here and have to sit by myself.
Yeah.
And I'm surrounded by the church, the Western church, is a really family centric place. And I say this with like, I really am not meaning to, again, just poke holes, because I didn't notice it until I was divorced.
Yeah.
But you know how many metaphors for marriage pastors use?
Yeah.
And how many jokes they make about, marriage. It's almost the underlying assumption that everybody in there is married and gets it. And I'm not mad about that, but I do think it's
being aware.
It's being aware that like there's probably a couple single people. I mean, we know that divorce rates are hovering around 50%, both inside and outside the church. I'm not saying that means 50% of everybody who makes it to church on a given Sunday are divorced. It's probably not there, but there's a lot of people really, really hurting. And sometimes, and I know, and people give great sermons on marriage and encouraging hurting marriages, but it's also, it's how does the single mom fit into so many of the illustrations that are being used? And obviously you can't be all things to all people. Nobody can do that. And the single moms, anybody needs to kind of take what they need from a sermon sometimes and not. But I have felt remarkably lonely trying to get back into church. And it's not because I'm not surrounded by nice people either. I am. It's just hard.
One of the things that we're planting at church, I'm pastoring a church plant. And this is really interesting because when you plant a church, you have to pay for every single thing. And so like even to rent out and to do something as an evening event, you have to like pay for it. And so one of the big conversations that we were having as a staff, like about a month ago, was, well, that means we can only afford to do like 1 or 2 events in the fall. And so we're initially going to do like a marriage course because, marriage is important and we want to strengthen healthy marriages. But then we said, well, we can't have the one event that we do that we can actually afford to rent out be for only a portion of the congregation. And the single people and the single moms, we have a good number of those in our congregation, are automatically excluded. And what does it communicate when you have one major fall event and the major fall event is built only around couples? And so we're trying to struggle to figure out how do you do that as a congregation, because one of the things you want to say, so you want to strengthen marriages because you want to help that reality. You don't want to have more broken marriages, but at the same time, you don't want to make family and marriage the only like be all end all of being Christian. One of the things that made Christianity so compelling is that God valued each and every person apart from their relationship to someone else. Like if you could be single to the glory of God. And so how do you balance doing those things as a congregation is something that I know. And the same thing that I have to like check myself, because obviously I live a life with a wife and 4 kids. And so my narrative world that I'm drawing from is often there. So I'm always trying to think, okay, even on the podcast, how do I avoid simply, like you said, having every analogy be an ongoing commentary on here's an anecdote from my marriage that I can then apply to a sermon. So that was actually a good word. Now, you've written about being a single mom, but your most recent book, and I would tell people, I was on a different podcast and I was both of us were talking about our children's book. I was talking about Andy Johnson and the March for Justice. And you were talking about, I want to make sure I get the right title, the very best baseball game. And I was in the middle of the interview and I was like, I think I want her book.
So kind, Esau.
And I was like, oh, so I'm thinking in the middle of a podcast interview, I'm going to recruit Katie onto my podcast. So nice. And so can you tell me a little bit, tell us a little bit, I know about it, but I'm going to hear her say it again. Tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write about the very best baseball game.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, my 11-year-old was diagnosed with severe autism when he was 2. And, one of the things that you grieve when disability becomes part of your story, obviously, I hope it goes without saying to the listeners that there is a lot of blessing and kindness of the Lord and mercy. There is so much that is good about my son's life. And he is made in the image of God, just like everybody else. And yet it's also, and I've gotten very comfortable saying this, it's both. There's a lot of things that are very hard with a severe disability too. Yeah. And that is okay to say both of those things. And one of the things I agree, I was an athlete my entire life, and sports meant so much to me.
What was your sport?
Soccer.
What did you play? My son's a soccer player. What was your position?
I was an outside mid.
Oh, an outside mid. Okay.
I wasn't like the fastest, but I would just keep running. Okay. And running. Yes. Played at Arizona State. Go Sun Devils.
Oh, look at this. So you played in college and everything. You weren't messing around. So you were there before there was NIL money. So you didn't get any money to play.
Esau, we need another podcast on that. Can you have me back and I will get on my soapbox for that. Okay.
We'll come back. I'm sorry, but you were an athlete.
But I was an athlete, and sports just shaped so much of the grit that I think I have, and the hard work, and the kind of you show up and don't make excuses attitude that I have. And I'm not like I hope I'm not painting myself as like that sports mom, that really like over the top one. But I wanted always my kids to be part of something. Like we all want our kids to be part of something.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, with severe autism, we tried the gymnastics class, we tried, and it was just embarrassment, meltdown, running away and so I kind of, when he was 4 years old, I just resigned myself. My son's not ever going to be able to be a part of something.
Yeah.
And that's like just something I had to grieve. And then 2 years ago, he was invited to this disability baseball team, and it has become the best 6 weeks of the year for us. And it's all, kiddos with varying, some critically impaired, some, less impaired, but I'm telling you that it is a holy hour of kids just out there because they love to play and they get to be kids. And so when I was approached about writing a children's book, at first I said no, because I was like, well, I write for grownups. Yeah. Like I don't know how to write a children's book. But then one of my friends heard me talking about how much this baseball team meant to me as a mom and to my son. And she's like, well, why don't you write about that?
Can you say a little bit more about how the baseball team works?
Yeah. So all of the kiddos that have a disability are partnered with a typical peer. So a child that does not have a disability. And they sometimes, if the child doesn't have use of their arms or in a wheelchair, they'll help them bat. Yeah. Sometimes in my son's case, he is not physically impaired, but that sweet boy just doesn't know any of the rules, right? So he hits the ball, and then his friend will grab his hand and tell him to run to first base and tell him to run to second base, and kind of keep him safe from fly ups and foul balls and all of that stuff. And so it's a great hour for the kids with disabilities, but also for the typical children that get to help. And so that's the point of view of the book is from a typical child learning. Like, these kids are different, but there's a lot about them that's just like me too. And we're all kids, and we all get to give and take and serve one another in a lot of ways. And so that's the premise of the book. And it's why I wrote it, so that other families would have kind of a tool to talk to their kids about the disability community.
So have you had to help your own kids, your other kids understand, or has it become intuitive, or do you have to advocate for canon like in other places? Have you had to do this work yourself?
Absolutely.
As far as having these conversations?
Absolutely. And my kids, I think by the time they were like 3 or 4 years old, that's when they really realized my brother is different.
Yeah.
Like my brother sometimes just like screams or why is he, and my son struggles with self-injurious behavior. Yeah. So he hits his head a lot. And so why is Cannon doing that?
Yeah.
So by the time they're 3 or 4, we're very much already, Cannon has a disability. Yeah. It's not his fault. It's not because of something he did. He is still made in the image of God. God's kindness to all of us did not change because Cannon has a disability. Preaching the truth that I preach to myself, I preach to my kids, right?
But you said that like you wanted this book to be able to help children. Do you have hopes that it might help parents be more understanding as well?
Yes, I do. Because sometimes the kids are the gracious ones.
Yeah.
I've been in public places where I've gotten some unsolicited parenting advice on my son from somebody who, I mean, literally somebody looked at me and because he was having a tough time following a certain rule. Yeah. And they looked at me and they're like, first kid. And I was like, ha.
First kid. No, not at all.
If you only knew. And that's like, that is a tough thing. But I absolutely, you know, I'm not under any kind of illusion that I'm going to just write this book and the whole world is going to read it and the world's going to be better for people with disabilities. But I also believe with all my heart that these stories can move the needle a little bit.
Yeah. No, I mean, you know, you asked me the reason that I was really interested to talk to you more, especially when you talked about this book, is that once again, is when you start a church, you begin to like realize all of these things. We had some people who were involved in our church who had a child with autism. And so helping my kids understand, and I actually had to do some of this work. And I wish I had known about your book to be able to give to my children, because like you said, sometimes the kids themselves, they don't still really understand, like, why can't, you know, this be easier? And what does it mean to have empathy? What does it mean to have patience and allow these kids to kind of be themselves and to love them and to understand, and not to say, well, let's just play the game this way. And so I thought that your book would be a great resource for my family in particular. So forgive me for using you.
I'm honored to say, by that.
But also not using you, but to say, like, I really do think that it is incumbent upon parents in particular to really encourage their kids to be open-hearted and to be patient. Yes. And so I wish that baseball, maybe that thing does exist in that area. Is there a particular age group that this book is targeted? So if there are parents wondering, like, who is this book for? What age group did you have in mind?
Yeah, honestly, it's probably about that 4 to 8 year old age group. Like, you know, going into kindergarten to maybe 2nd, 3rd grade. My son is 9 and he loves this book. And obviously I wrote it when he was 7, but he was kind of the, you know, when they say picture your target reader, he was sort of the one, that age group I had in mind, where they're really kind of figuring out differences between people. And yet they're out and they're in school, they're playing sports, they're in church, and they're kind of, and I want to say it's normal for kids to kind of run into kids with disabilities and be like, why is he strange? Why is he yelling? Like, allow your kids to ask those questions. Yeah. Don't shut them down. Just then kind of shape them to say, well, let's talk about why. Yeah. Do you know what a disability is? Let's talk about how his brain, because of the way his brain works, he's going to have some limits that not other people have, you know?
I know, once again, on the Esau Macaulay podcast, we're pro-church. We like church. We love Jesus. We love the Bible. And so we don't have a running commentary and like all of the things that the church does poorly. We critique the church as necessary, but we try to have a hopeful posture. Are there things, once again, that you want to say, here are 2 to 3 things that congregations, children's ministries, pastors can do to make spaces for children with disabilities to flourish in their midst?
Yes.
Like, I wish they did this.
Yes. There's two main things that come up, and I want to say I have been served by the church in this way, and so I hold the same posture. I love the church. I love the church, but early on, years ago, I have also been told your son can't come in here, and that is, I get it. I get it. I get that he's not following the rules. I get that, and so what can the church do? Well, there's 2 options. If you're going to still come to church, you can just miss church and sit in a Sunday school room with your child. Or can the church seek out a volunteer? You don't have to start a whole special needs ministry. If you're a big church and you have the resources, I love seeing that. That is great. But I don't think most churches have those resources. Yeah. I don't think you need to start a whole special needs ministry, but is there a volunteer? Is there a speech therapist? Is there a teacher? Is there just a grandma or grandpa with the biggest heart who says, I would love to sit with him during church, even if he has to sit on my lap for 90 minutes so you can go enjoy church. I would love to do that for you. Can I just tell you the service that is? to a mom, just to be like, I know he needs one-on-one help, and I'm exhausted. I don't know if I can do it. So that's one. The other thing that my pastor did for us at one point, there was an extra, like a kind of a larger storage room.
Yeah.
And church was getting harder as my son's autism symptoms got more and more severe. But we had 5 other kids, and I really wanted to get them to church. I didn't want to just all stay home. And I said to him, would it be possible to turn that storage room into a sensory room?
Yeah.
Keep the lights low. We put in a tent and a beanbag and a swing. Y'all, it was $200 to set up. This was not like a big, it's not that expensive. So that if he's dysregulated, if things are really going off the rails, there's a place that I can bring him where I don't have to take my whole family home from church.
Yeah.
And that was a game changer for us. And again, it's just a small room. And then other kids started using it. Sometimes there's babies or toddlers that they're dysregulated.
Yeah.
Having that small space was an amazing thing. So get creative. I'm not saying you need to overhaul the way you think about all your ministries. Just how can we make a little extra room?
I mean, I'm glad when you said you're not asking people to overhaul the entirety of their ministry. But I think that one of the things that I want to say, and I'm not trying to be overly dramatic, is like, why can't we make significant adjustments? I mean, sometimes, and I understand, because I have, like I said, friends and family who have children with different abilities. And you get to the point where you just say, just do this. And, and even with you, it's like, I'm going to ask for the bare minimum. And I just want to encourage people to say, what if we said something like this? Actually, they talk about this in the Bible that, different parts of the body, some need special care because of their vulnerability. Yeah. And so you sometimes can, and this is a challenge for me, not a proclamation for other people. Sometimes we can learn about what we truly believe about the gospel and God's concern for the people who are often tossed aside by the way that we care for the people who cannot benefit us. I mean, I'm not, you know what I mean? And so like, I'm not saying, I have no idea, I don't count people's money, but like, I'm assuming that like single moms aren't going to be the ones who are like tithing huge amounts of money, who are getting things named after them. And so maybe you just say, it's too much work for me to kind of put in this time. But I want to say that like God sees your son and all of the sons and daughters, people with different abilities, and they're worthy of our time and respect. Were you about to say something?
Well, I think too, a lot of churches make the mistake of saying, well, we just don't have any families with kids with disabilities. Oh. And so once we do, then we'll build the sensory room. Then we'll figure out the one-on-one buddies. Yeah. And that's just such a mistake.
Can I just say to that, they're just not coming.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
It is impossible that within your community, the community you are trying to reach, there are not families affected by disability. I have done multiple just kind of like polls on my own Instagram or talked to 80% of families who have a child with significant special needs just stopped trying. Yeah. They just stopped trying to go. Yeah. So no, you do. You have plenty of families that would love to come, but you have to go first. You have to make it possible first.
Yeah. So there at the center of this book is this story about a moment of service between kids with typical abilities and kids with different abilities. How are these moments of service described in the book? How have you seen this change the hearts of the kids who are serving?
Mm-hmm. You know what? I think that there's this, it's sort of like that, I never thought of it that way moment we have toward a lot of topics. So in the book, Bryce and Carson, those are the main characters. Bryce has a disability and Bryce hits the baseball very far. Yeah. And for Carson, it's this moment of like, wait, he can still do that even though he can't talk?
Yeah.
Like, he can still do that. And that moment could take on a million different shades, but it's just this moment for kids when something that they expected just gets beautifully shattered. Like, oh my goodness. And yes, he still needs help running around the bases. Yeah. But when your expectations are just like, when you give people room to surprise you, they will. And I think it's like moments like that kids, they need, and they never forget them. Yeah. They never forget them. And yet we got to put our kids in the way. We got to put ourselves in the way of those moments of like thinking I'm here to do a really good thing for somebody else. But that posture might get blown up when you're the one that's taught and you're the one that's changed and you're the one that's growing.
So if I wanted to sit down and talk with my kids about disability, where would be a good place for us to begin? What would be the advice that you would give to parents as to how do we start this conversation in ways that are healthy?
I think this might be like the most elementary answer ever, but especially if it's younger kids, just making sure, do you know what a disability is?
Yeah.
Do you understand what a disability is? And then I have, a definition that's included in the Parent Connection in the book, but it's anything that can physically or intellectually limit or challenge a person. And it's important that kids know that disabilities are not somebody's fault.
Yeah.
And so starting with just that simple, do you know what it is? And then when you see people at the grocery store or at the park or whatever who are exhibiting what looks to be like a disability, you can pull your child aside and say, well, shameless, but remember the baseball book we read? But if you didn't read the book, like, remember when we talked about what a disability is and how it just means that they might need something differently than you do. No. Keep it simple, but honest too. It's okay to be honest.
You might be above a shameless plug, but I'm not. And I will say to any parent anywhere that this is a very good way to begin a conversation with your kids. And so I'm going to say to you, the Macaulay House will have their copy of The Very Best Baseball Game, and I hope that you will have one too. We're going to have you back on the podcast to talk about whatever else crosses our mind. Every conversation won't be about disability, but we loved having you. Hopefully you'll come back another time.
Esau, is my honest honor to be on here with you. Thank you so much. And you too, Mike. Even though you didn't know how many presidents were on Mount Rushmore, it's
okay.
She can definitely come back.
And then you just cut my legs out from underneath me.
She definitely is coming back. And she knows how to do this, right?
Man,
she gave and she took it right away.
I didn't even get my question in this episode. You're just like, who cares about Mike? He doesn't know how many presidents are on Mount Rushmore.
Potential co-host Mike, if he gets 100 comments, I got to keep upping it because
100? I thought we were at 25.
Okay, 30. Okay. 30 is fair. Right. Thank you so much for coming, Katie. We'll have you on again.
Thank you for having me.
The Esau Macaulay podcast is a production of Holy Post Media, produced by Mike Stay Low, Stray Low. If you know, now you know. Edited by Seth Gorvette, like a Corvette. Music by Rob Knorr. Make sure to follow the show wherever you get your podcast and leave a review so more people can find it. See you next time. I'm out.
I'm penning these letters with prayers they can aid your endeavors. It's clever benevolence, tasted it, wrestle with, still wrestling. Touch my side and it crushed my pride and told me I'm blessed within. Receive a Christian platitude with gratitude, but in the saddest news I live in doesn't add up to the Beatitudes. Catch me in the catacombs, chiefing like they Pat Mahomes, catching bullets, tackle foes, running plays, defending zones. Field got them doing football numbers, only half is grown. He was acting grown.